So today I'm going to be taking a look at a vintage Rolex. I'm not going to go too much into the brand. I mean, short version, they were founded in the 1900s. They pretty much became a monster of a brand because Wilsdorf was a basically amazing marketer. He knew how to put his watches in the right places at the right time and capitalize on it. So, one of the biggest brands in the world today, but we are looking at a vintage watch. Vintage appeals to me a little more because the sizing was better for me personally. The price is still cheaper than the prices of new ones on most models. And that's pretty much it. So let's get into it.
So here we are with the very simple Rolex 6426. I believe this watch is from 1970, give or take. And let's get some dimensions on it. We got a diameter of about 34.5, lug to lug of about 41, and a height of just over 9.5. So a couple specifications for the watch. Obviously it's very simple, a three-hander, time-only watch. It sports the Rolex 1225 manual winding movement, which allows it to be very, very thin, very comfortable as well. That usually beats at around 21,600 vibrations per hour. Usually has somewhere north of a 50-hour power reserve, which is pretty awesome, not only for a watch in this time, but also a watch in our time, because not a lot of watches have a power reserve that high anymore, really. We have a plexiglass crystal here, as you can see, very, very domed, drilled lug holes, and that's really the main things for the watch. So moving on to this dial, it is basically simplicity, at its most base form. You literally get everything you need and nothing you don't. What I kind of just like about this watch is it's basically luxury done simply. It's the quality of Rolex. It's not over the top. It's not in your face. It is built well, but only to a specific purpose, and that purpose is to tell the time. And it does that very well. We can see we have all applied indices as well as the applied Rolex crown there. Very simple face, Rolex Oyster, and then Precision, and then T-Swiss T, because at some point this was probably having tritium on it. Does it have tritium anymore? I doubt it. As you can kind of see, someone's attempted to go over these indices again with some kind of paint or just some kind of refinishing technique, just to allow I guess the watch to look a little newer. As you can see, there is some just natural aging, some rust, some oxidation that's happening on those markers, which it doesn't come through completely because someone tried to redo it a little bit. But I feel like with the cream tone of the dial, with this slightly white leaning markers now because of this refinishing technique, it actually does work very well together, and especially far away from the wrist. Just sitting, on a table, on the wrist, anywhere, you're not really going to notice it. Again, this is a watch from the 70s. They're not really going to be anything to write home about in terms of the finishing, in terms of the overall look of the watch. The bad thing about these vintage Rolexes is it's just hard to tell whether or not it's ever been redone, repainted, refinished. Because the Rolex lettering is so crisp and just nicely done, obviously those markers are also have this refinishing to them. Possibly this has been redialed at some point, but I'm by no means any expert. On this macro level, you can see even better how those markers were attempted to be remedied, I guess you can say. But the nice thing is there is a lot of dimensionality to those markers. It's nice that they put the basically double markers at the 3, 6, and 9 position, and then the crown at 12. It has just a very nice, symmetrical, simple, clean design. We have those nice, simple baton style-ish, sorta-ish style hands. Nothing crazy, but executed well. Moving on to the case, we have the classic Rolex Oyster case with that concentric circle brushed top lugs, bulbousy bellish type shape to the classic Oyster style. The high polished sides. It's nice that we have drilled lug holds on this model. The signed Rolex cornet crown. We do have a screw down crown, but for some reason this case in particular only has 50 meters of water resistance versus the usual 100, with a lot of oyster cases. I mean, it's okay, I mean, it's a dress watch from literally the 70s, so you're not really going to be taking this diving anytime soon, or I hope you don't. Swimming even, like, don't take it swimming. I don't know why you would. The lugs have kept a lot of their just original bulkiness to them, I guess you would say, the original shape. And because it is a Rolex Oyster case, I've found just in my experience with Rolex cases and Rolex style cases, they do wear larger than the dimensions would say. They sit very squat on the wrist, and they just wear well. The back, as you can see, is just very, very plain, classic little Rolex screw back type design. So, putting this watch on the wrist, earlier I was wearing my little Timex Snoopy. So here we have the 34.5 millimeter case against my 6.5 inch wrist. I personally love the way this watch wears. It is very classically sized. It is, for me, kind of what a watch should look like. Not too overly large, just very understated, very just a part of the wrist versus overpowering the wrist. The only thing that's annoying, and I didn't mention it earlier, but this has 19 millimeter lugs. It kind of sucks, but nowadays there are more companies doing 19 millimeter straps. You have Barton options, you have this company, Vario, who makes these really nice leather straps, and they come in a couple different colors, so you can have fun with those. Obviously, you can always get things custom made or go to the higher end, like, $60 to $100 straps, but we're starting to get more options in the, under $50 range, which is really nice. As you can see there, the watch wears very, very close to the wrist. The case back doesn't protrude very much at all, so it just allows the watch to sit really well on the wrist. And the only real height that comes from this watch is from that plexiglass crystal. And just because of the way it is domed or the way it is raised, it really will slide under any cuff. Because it doesn't have a long lug to lug length, it's gonna literally be able to fit under any cuff. And this watch is just really cool. I mean, it's very simple. But because it's so simple, it allows it to be dressed up, dressed down. You put it on a different strap, it allows it to take on a new personality. Speaking of which, because there's not so much intensity to this design, to this watch, to necessarily even this review, I'm gonna put this on a couple different straps so we can just kind of see the different scenarios it could fit and just how it changes the watch. This nice kind of tannish, taupish brown, I think really accents the whitey creaminess of the dial. It's just a really good combination, I think. Once you put it against the wrist, I think it just wears the color well. It makes it a very, very color neutral option, and I just like the look. Here's probably one of my personal favorite combinations. It's just the way the gray suede not only makes it very casual, but I think gray personally is just a really nice color to just go not only with any color of face, but also just any color of clothing that you're wearing. It just really, really lets the watch shine. This particular strap here is from B&R Bands. When I got the strap, it had this little, whatever you would call this, imperfection in it, which was unfortunate, but still very nice quality strap, and just, 19 millimeters, so it fits the watch. This strap I absolutely love on this watch. You get the nice texture of the leather, the nice light brown against the cream. This strap is from Vevlinist. Once you go into these kind of straps, these kind of range from like $80 to over $100. So you're paying a good amount for the strap, but they are handmade. They're great quality. They're also custom sized, so you can get exactly the size you want. It's a very nice strap, complements the watch very well. Light brown, I feel like it's a very casual leather option. So it leans dressy, but it's also very, very, very casual at the same time. This is the last combination I'll show, and it's one that I actually do really like. This is one of those kind of one-pass straps from Cheapest NATO Straps. And the benefit of this is it's not only very, very, very casual, but the strap itself is just a nice way to mix up the watch. It's a single pass, so it's easy to take on and off if you have multiple colors. Of course, this look won't be for everybody. It is hyper casual, super nice though, in my opinion. I really like how the tan khaki plays against the cream of the dial. And yeah, again, just reiterating the fact that this is such a simple dial, it allows it to just be kind of like a blank canvas, just project as many straps, ideas, colors, textures onto it as you want. And because it's just a small size, it's never going to be in the way, it's never going to be too bulky. It's always an accessory and an addition to your look versus being something that's overpowering and the main object of what you're wearing or you're trying to present to the world, really.
So pros and cons of the watch. Basically, the biggest pro, or one of the bigger pros, was that it's a Rolex. You can find this watch for under $2,000, which is another pretty good pro. But for that price, you're getting a watch from a brand that people aspire to have, that people respect, appreciate. Some people hate it. Some people go into that watch category of they're so much better than Rolex, why own a Rolex? But nonetheless, they make a good quality watch, and this is a decent price to get one at. The sizing on the watch I think is really nice. 34 millimeters. It works well for my smaller wrist. It works well on bigger wrists as a more dressier size. Not many companies make that anymore, and it's just refreshing to see. I mean, technically it's not refreshing since it's not a new watch, it's an old watch, but it's nice to wear that size again. And overall, just the simplicity of the watch. I really like how it can be dressed up, dressed down, worn in shorts and a t-shirt, worn in a suit. Basically, any strap you put it on gives it a new personality because it's such a blank canvas of a watch. So those are all pretty big pros to me. Moving on to the cons, one of the biggest cons will be that it's vintage. It is going to need more maintenance than a modern watch. It will have less part availability than a modern watch. It may be a little more lenient in its timekeeping. But as long as you research the watch, know what you're doing, buy from a company that's reputable, a seller that's reputable, you'll most likely be fine. If it's not something you want the headache to deal with, then go modern, find something else. There's plenty of similar watches. They do even a very similar modern interpretation of this watch. Just cost a lot more money. The other real con is that it is simple. For some people, they like the simplicity. Some people don't. Some people want a GMT or a dive bezel or water resistance or some cool fancy dial texture. This watch doesn't have any of that. It's simple, no nonsense. It is what it is, and it's not pretending to be anything else. So if you're not into simple watches, it definitely isn't the watch for you, but there are watches that you can find that are for you. And lastly, the lug width is a little bit of a bummer. 19 millimeters, not the most readily available size, not the most mass market size, but there's Grand Seikos, there's one of the Omegas, I think it's the first Omega in space, has 19 millimeter lugs. So there are some watches out there that have 19 millimeter lugs, and if you have them already, that's good. If you don't, you're just kind of spend a little bit of money and get some straps. But once you got them, you got them, so it's not that big of a deal. Overall, it's a good watch. It is a fairly decent price considering the brand and the quote-unquote status of a Rolex watch. It is simple, so it matches every occasion. And it's a good way to introduce yourself into both modern, not modern, but vintage sizing to see if you like that kind of thing, as well as if you care about wanting something more. Simplicity is good, but some people aren't geared towards liking it. Some people really are of the vein of mind that, man, I want something complicated if I'm spending this much money, and that's fine. I get that. So if you're just looking for a nice, casual, that can be dressy watch, that's good quality, that will probably last you the rest of your life if you take care of it, you can't go wrong here. Use the watch as a testing grounds of whether you want to try out vintage, you want to try out smaller sizes, you want to try out Rolex. And in the end, thank you for giving my channel a try. I'll see you in another video.